Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Sham Ashram in Cali, Colombia, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Sleep In Sunday interview day. Welcome, everybody. If you're new, if you're listening to this on Facebook, is Facebook on yet? It's not. Forget it. Forget it, Facebook people. You'll be here in a second. Well, we're in Cali, Colombia. We got a cool crew live here. Kelly Skinner, Matt Godin, Jerome from Holland. Amalini, who's knitting right now. And Bunky and Damodar Priya are here live. We're between programs. We're about to start the Kirtan Academy. It's exciting. It's sort of our last chill day before everybody shows up. And we have a special guest today. His name is Sri Prahlada. Before we introduce him, we want to welcome everybody on Facebook who's doing this. This is Wisdom of the Sages. We do this every day. It's a study of the ancient and incredibly relevant canon of literature, 18,000 verses, the Srimad Bhagavatam, which tells you how to add spirit to your life using all these incredible, fantastic stories from ancient kings and kingdoms of India. It talks about avatars, incarnations, and according to Vyasadeva, the author itself, the author of all the Vedas, it says, this is it. This is the cream of the crop, the top of the tree, the sweetest of the fruit of all Vedic study. It's the goal of our yoga practice. This is why we're doing up dog, down dog, doing Ayurvedic panchakarma cleanses. It's the reason why we're detoxing. It's to get to this point, the highest stage where you start to understand, I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm a divine being, and I'm meant to fall in love with my source. This is it. This is yoga and union. And we've got a special guest today. Facebook people, we do this every day. If you want to join us live, you can, or you can binge listen to episodes on Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get podcasts. And tell them how to join live. And you can join live. Hang out with us. We got about 100 people live here. All you got to do is email Mara. She's right here, the lovely Malibu Mara. She's bronze from hanging out in Cali, Colombia. By emailing her. She's living the life.
Natural.
She's just chanting in a bikini, walking around. It's the new version of the Matajis. This didn't happen this wasn't around when I lived in the ashrams. Matajis walking around in bikinis. But whatever. It's 2022. And it's working for her. And it's very sunny today. It's very sunny every day. It's 80 degrees. And I know Vegan Trucker back home sent me a screenshot. It said it was negative 23 where me and Vegan Trucker live. And that is like uninhabitable for humans. Anyway, Facebook people, join us live. Wisdom of the Sages 108@gmail.com. That's where you can get the secret codes to enter our Zoom group. And also, that's where you can add questions. If you have questions, you write them to Mara here. She will compile them. And Saturday is Q&A day. A lot of people love Q&A day. That's the thing they binge listen to. New people like to join in on Q&A day. And any other announcements before we introduce Sri Prahlada?
Yeah, there's a Bhakti recovery group meeting at 9:30 a.m. this morning. And for Patreon members, Katie Bell is offering a Sangha at 10:30 a.m. And the link is on Patreon.
Nice. Katie Bell's wonderful.
Yeah.
I've got announcements. I'm taking a group of inspired devotees, bhaktas, inspirational people who want a paradigm shift in their life to Nepal. Nepal was, was part of the Indian kingdom, and then it became its own country. And we went last year, and it was incredible. And so this sacred pilgrimage and trekking through Nepal is March 13th through March 25th. Go to my website, www.raghunath.yoga. Isn't that great? .yoga. You don't need .com. You can get .yoga now. And it's great. You're great. Okay. It's great. I'm gonna just trail off here. So I'm gonna introduce Sri Prahlada, our special guest, Harry Bull.
Hey, hello, Raghunath. Hello,
Welcome to the show, brother. I'm gonna read. You got a pretty impressive bio. You got one of those bios when I read it, I'm like, what the hell am I doing with my life? I gotta get serious. But here we go. Sri Prahlada is an Australian bhakti yoga practitioner, teacher, and kirtaniya, currently living in London. Sri Prahlada was practically born into bhakti and cultivated his initial attraction when attending school at ashrams in Australia and India. So he was in an ashram at age 5. His parents moved into ashram. At age 12, this is huge. Listen to this one. At age 12, Sri Prahlada led an Australian campaign to free Hare Krishna devotees persecuted in the USSR.
What were you doing when you were 12, Raghunath?
When he was 12. What were you doing when you were 12?
I'm asking you.
Kelly
first.
Skinner? You know what I was doing? I was destroying Hot Wheels cars, pulling heads off G.I. Joes. That's what I was doing at 12. I wasn't leading a international movement to free imprisoned, persecuted Hare Krishnas. And that was a hit signal, I think. They made a hit signal. Let me just read on with this because I will squirrel my way right out of here. A natural musical talent, and he is, by the way. I've been
incredible
with him.
Music
I
talent.
performed with him. He's one of those natural musicians that I'm also jealous of. A natural musical talent, Sri Prahlada recorded a song requesting Gorbachev to free the Soviet Hare Krishnas from religious persecution. That gained widespread media attention. He further won a recording contract with the record giant, EMI. Right?
Yeah,
EMI. You know the song, right? Sex Pistols song. Releasing 2 singles and an album entitled Through the Eyes of a Child. In 1988, Australian Prime Minister Bob Hawke delivered a letter from Sri Prahlada to the Soviet President Michael Gorbachev. Within days of Hawke's visit, devotees were freed.
There you go.
What? You're like, what's his name? Who's the guy? In prison in Africa for years.
Oh,
Nelson Mandela?
Now you're Nelson Mandela of the Hare Krishna movement. It's incredible. At age, I never knew the whole story of that. Okay, I'm gonna tease. We're gonna get into the bottom of this. At age 15, you got initiated, and you've also been mentored. But yeah, you traveled all over the world at age 15 with Indradyumna Swami, whom we love. And then when not teaching or researching at university, he dedicates his heart and soul to sharing bhakti in temples, yoga studios across the globe. He's a PhD, right? You cut that out.
Yeah, I did cut
You cut out the fact that he's a PhD.
I had to cut out something. There was so much.
You left in that he was in Satyaraj's book, the Yoga of Kirtan, but you cut out the fact that he was a PhD.
I had 3 minutes.
Anyway, he's done lots of stuff. He's incredibly inspirational. I did a kirtan with you in Australia. Do you remember that, Prabhu?
That's right. Yeah, 5 years ago or something. 4 or 5 years ago. It was wonderful.
That was incredible. And then yesterday, he told me, "Oh, and I also went on tour with you." I was like, "What?"
He was just a kid at the time.
You were.
That's
How
right.
old were you?
I trailed along. I was just 15.
You were 15, and what tour was it?
So
And why
you
don't I
were
remember?
traveling Shelter and 108. You guys were on tour in the northeast of the US, and I was visiting New York, and Dhanadam Maharaj invited me to join, and so yeah, I couldn't turn it down. It was super exciting.
That was a fun tour.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was unfamiliar with the music.
Surprise.
Hardcore.
I love when
But-
civilians show up at a hardcore show, especially Hare Krishna civilians. Like, what?
But I just loved your energy, and you're screaming from the microphone on stage, the message of the Bhagavat. That's what I could make out from all the lyrics.
Someone had to do it.
It was a
Someone
good
had to do
vibe,
it.
though, right? It was a good vibe. You could feel
It was incredible. Oh yeah, absolutely. And then
And you
meeting
pretty
up.
interesting considered you lived an incredibly cloistered life, maybe up to then at 15.
Right.
You were in an
Yeah, yeah.
ashram living in a gurukula. That
Yeah.
means it's like you're a monk, a child monk. Where were your parents?
In Australia. So I was
Wow.
in New Zealand. Oh, sorry, I was in India. My parents were in India. Sorry. Whoa, I'm getting mixed up here.
Parents are in Australia, you were in India.
That's right. Yeah.
What year was
So-
that?
1983 that I went to Vrindavan.
Wow.
It was the premier Gurukul in our society at the time. That's the ashram school at the time. And I asked to be sent there. I'd heard so much about that school, and it's in
At
Vrindavan,
age
that holy
5,
place.
you asked?
At age 8, yeah. I'd heard so much about the
Who
school.
does that at age 8?
and so I put in my petition, and it was approved. My parents agreed, the local school authorities agreed, and so I was put on a plane, and Dadada Maharaj picked me up at the airport in Delhi, and culture shock, immediate culture shock. I went to Vrindavan, and I still wasn't quite sure if I was there yet, because it wasn't the Vrindavan I had imagined as a
Right.
child from reading.
Especially in 1983.
Bhagavatam.
In 1983,
Right.
that was like an ancient time
Different
to be
world.
in India, completely divorced from anything. There was no insight into any other culture unless you research those cultures. Now you can just say,
Mm.
what is
Mhm.
Japan like? And you YouTube
Mhm.
search Japan, and you could take a tour of Osaka. You don't,
Yeah.
you couldn't do that back then. You
Yeah.
had to go to places to experience them. And so
Yeah,
you
and it
grew up.
was
Yeah.
it was a bit austere, but now in hindsight, I really, really appreciate that. I feel like I got to see the trail end of a much more ancient way of living.
Mm.
I mean, it's still there today, but it's changed so much in this time period. But
Prabhu, I
at that
feel
time, yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm such an interrupter. Kaustubha will tell you off the camera.
Let him
Kaustubha
talk,
will
bro.
explain.
Do it on the camera. Let him
But
talk.
yeah, we had clay pots for the water in our room, and the water would come once a day. The drinking water would come once a day, and would go and fill our clay pots and keep them in the room. And it was just a very different. We had hand fans and kusha grass mats covering our windows, so that's the air conditioning, the kusha grass mat that you douse with water, and then the wind blows through it, and it actually does cool. And so I really felt I
You
was at
put
the
a
end.
kusha grass mat doused with water, and when the wind blows, it cools it off.
Yeah, that's
It's a
like
genius.
But I just thought I'd mention that your training there and in the Mayapur Gurukul, it just gave you an incredibly rich cultural experience as a young man.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that when we moved into the ashram in New Zealand, actually, when with my parents I moved in initially, I thought I was moving into a monastery, but I didn't quite get the monastic type experience that I was looking for, even as a 5-year-old.
You were looking for a monastic experience as a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Who are
I
you,
was.
man?
But then the schools in India, particularly in Mayapur, we're living in the grass huts with the earth floor, and we're learning. We were chanting, Vedic mantras and doing fire yagyas morning and
Riding
evening at
elephants
sunset and
also.
sunrise.
Did you get to ride
Yeah.
the elephants?
I didn't ride the elephant. I would chant the mantras before the elephant, and the deities on the elephant during those processions. That was our service.
Sounds like a normal childhood.
Right. So yeah, absolutely. I felt very, very privileged to have had those opportunities and a rich experience. We would cook, and we would do fire sacrifice, like very, very uncommon.
Yeah.
Um,
I always remember, I think it was at 60 Minutes, like the Australian 60 Minutes or something, that did a television show on you when you were in the ashram in Australia. You must have been 8 maybe, or younger.
Wait a second. He was on 60
younger.
Minutes, and that didn't make it to the bio?
Yeah, you maybe 6 years old, or
Yeah, I would have been 6 then. Yeah.
and I remember they show you, the way I remember, you were like standing in a lake or something like that.
Yeah,
And you were singing, and you were just singing out. I don't remember, was it Sri Krishna Chaitanya or something
That's
like
right.
that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
you're
that's
just,
that's the reason why I would sing that. So
Yeah.
the ashram in Australia, it's incredible. It's by Mount Warning. It's it's 1,000 acres, rolling countryside, mountains, and then there's a lake
Which ashram?
and a river. This is at New Govardhan. Did you visit
Oh,
there?
that place is incredible.
It's amazing, right? Mango
Amazing.
trees and papaya and guavas just growing wild all over the place. Macadamia nuts, and then the ocean's like 20 minutes drive from there. Just this amazing place. And so 60 Minutes did a special on our school. When I enrolled in that school, I was the 8th child. It was just a brand new school that started, and 60 Minutes came to do a special on our school and on that community. And they captured me singing in the river. There's a river at the front of that property. So it's hills at the back, and then it rolls down into a river. And I was singing this prayer to Chaitanya. And there's a reason why I was singing that prayer. I used to sing it all the time. It wasn't just that I sung that for the cameras. I used to sing that song because I had this realization that Chaitanya is the one, who shares love, and he's sharing love with the world. And I really wanted to connect with his mercy and his energy. And I decided that, he's going to be my person. I had pictures of him in my locker.
dedicate your life to this particular manifestation of Krishna.
Yeah, that's right.
Kirtan.
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
you know what I've realized, Kaustubha?
Yeah.
Besides, we're dealing with some saintly being right now. I've realized that, he's coming from Murwillumbah. That's where that temple is, and it was already like paradise there. It's lined with mango and guava trees. There's frangipani, the champak flowers growing everywhere. So when you hear these descriptions of Vrindavan, for us, you and me were like a couple dirtbags from the Lower East Side. So when we went to Vrindavan, excuse me. Well, I was okay. How about that? A couple dirtbags. So in us, we were just like fascinated, like a papaya tree. Oh my God, a papaya tree! These things grow tropical fruit. We were like fascinated. There's flowers here, but for him, he's sort of like, wait a second. This is a dusty village made of concrete, and they were already coming from it. We were just, I think, we were amazed by the flowers and the fragrance and the stuff like that. But if you're coming from a very lush tropical in Australia, very, countryside, it's breathtaking.
Yeah, that was the shock. You're absolutely right, Raghunath. That was the shock. So I came from this place, and I'm reading the stories about Krishna. We're hearing the stories about Krishna from the Bhagavatam, and I'm imagining Vrindavan to be like that, the rolling hills and the cows everywhere, and green grass, and then I arrive in Vrindavan, and I'm looking at, it's amazing, but it's dust and it's quite dry.
Dusty
and I wasn't quite sure if I was there yet. Like, when are we going to Vrindavan?
We hear you. And you're almost coming from a place like that. Right.
Yeah. But of course, Vrindavan has all those amazing temples, the 5,000 temples. And
I'm sorry, please go ahead.
I was just going to say it's rich in another way than I was kind of expecting.
Right.
But for sure, nonetheless. Yeah.
But I from that 60 Minutes scene where you're in the river and you're singing and you're 6 years old or so, I remember I probably saw that when I was like 22 years old, and just kind of new to bhakti and had seen that, and I just remember seeing you sing. It was obvious that like you're singing just full-hearted. It was just beautiful. It was just beautiful to see, a young boy like that, just with his whole heart, just singing those prayers. There was immediately something special in your voice, in the way that you sang. And honestly, it's something that continues to this day. If anyone has the fortune to hear Sri Prahlada's kirtans, there's all kinds of kirtans and kirtan leaders and people sing and different, and it's wonderful. But some people, when they sing, it's very tangible. It's very real that there's something that you can't put your finger on that's like deeply spiritual about it and deeply moving about it. And I really where can people find your kirtans if they want to listen to your music?
A YouTube search will bring up,
Okay.
lots of kirtan there.
Are you on like Spotify or those kind of things?
On
Or if people want to buy it?
Yeah, not Spotify. There are albums on Amazon.
Okay.
There are albums there. Yeah.
And then after your Gurukul time, you traveled with a guest that we've had on the show before, Indradyumna Swami, just a great, incredibly vibrant manifestation of bhakti who just travels widely and uplifts people wherever he goes. And that must have been how many years did you travel with Indradyumna Swami?
18 years.
Wow.
18 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
What? I thought it was 3 years. How did I miss that in the bio? I thought it said 15 to 18. You've been traveling with Indradyumna Swami for 18 years?
I traveled with Maharaj for 18 years. So yeah, that was a most wonderful experience. What happened was I was finishing school and looking at what's next and how do I contribute, and I decided to take a world trip to see and learn from different teachers, how to speak nicely, how to deepen my kirtan experience, and then Indradyumna Maharaj came to Australia.
Now you're how old at this point?
I was 15.
Okay.
So he came to Australia and I was supporting him, like doing some service for him and helping him in his kirtan. And then he said, why don't you travel with me? I already had my round the world ticket. So I said, no, I already have a plan, but thank you for asking. He said, okay, just come with me to the next place. And then after that, he invited me to the next city and then the next city after that. And
For any parents out there going, what's wrong with my kids?
And finally, after a few weeks, I realized, okay, this is actually what I wanted. I had prayed to deepen my own understanding, and I prayed for that opportunity to learn from others. And here's, the response. Krishna has given me the opportunity. I'm being given an invitation to travel with this incredible teacher, Samyasi. I already have the round the world ticket. It's just a matter of rerouting my itinerary to join him. And so it took me a little while to figure out that I had prayed and here was my answer, but I already had another plan and it wasn't exactly the same. And so I was a little slow to realize that actually this was an answer to a prayer that I had made.
Maybe we're all slow to recognize how Krishna's answering our prayers.
Yeah, I think so. Because we have a prayer and then we make a plan, and then the arrangements come, and our eyes. It can take us a little time to open our eyes to the answer that's been given. So I try to be a bit more attentive.
I think we skipped over something that needs to get some light put
we know
upon
this is
it.
where you wanted to go.
In the same way that Krishna killed Jarasandha and liberated all the kings that were kept in the dungeons, you as a child made a hit single that was directed towards communist Russia and liberated a bunch of devotees of Krishna who it was completely illegal to practice bhakti. There was one, and it's hard to even remember this far back unless you're older, that there was one state religion, I think it was Greek Orthodox, perhaps, maybe. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Orthodox,
Russian Orthodox. And you had to, if you wanted to worship God, that was it. That was your option. Anything else, you were getting tortured, put in labor camps, you're getting murdered by the KGB. And so there was an underground movement of people practicing bhakti because Prabhupada got a visa to go there. This is an unbelievable story. And so from Shama Sundar, who we interviewed on the show not that long ago, Shama Sundar mystically arranged a visa for an Indian Swami, master of bhakti, to get right into the USSR, where he met one person. And from that one person, a seed was planted, and there was an entire underground movement of bhakti. And all they had to do when they got found out by the KGB was renounce it, and they just wouldn't. And therefore, they were all incredibly persecuted. And at the time when you were growing up, now, can you just tell us about that time and remind us, especially those who are too young to remember, what the hell the situation was like and how you got some inspiration to do that? And yeah, the whole story. It is incredible.
Yeah. So from, as I'm sure you remember from your childhood, the USSR was quite a fascinating place for the Western mindset at the time. It was mysterious. We didn't know what happened behind the Iron Curtain, and there was always a curiosity about it, and including these Bhakti-yogis. So Prabhupada had gone to the USSR. He had met a young student and initiated him within a couple of days, gave him the name Ananta Shanti, and then he was able to spread bhakti far and wide. And but they didn't have books. They couldn't have books. It was illegal to have books, so they would copy the books by hand. And so there was an illegal publishing and smuggling of books like the Bhagavad-gita and the Bhagavad Purana, Srimad Bhagavatam, amongst these underground networks. They couldn't have malas, they couldn't have japa beads. And so these were all, so they would make them themselves, carve the beads from wood and strand them together for japa meditation. And when I knew there were bhakti yogis in the USSR, I knew that Prabhupada had gone there, and I knew there was a community, but you couldn't know anything about it. Even within the bhakti community in Australia, it was top secret. Anyone who knew anything wouldn't say anything because it could jeopardize those who were there in the USSR. So it was very, very secretive, the whole operation that was going on there. But I was, as children are, I was so curious to know, who these bhakti yogis were, what they were doing. And then in 1986, there was a decision made to, rather than keep it secret, to actually broadcast it and to bring attention to the plight of these bhakti yogis in the USSR.
That was like within the Krishna society, there was like, we gotta help these guys.
Yeah. Wow. So, they were trying to help them by keeping it secret, but at some point they realized the way to help them now is to actually bring the world's attention to it, because it was opening up with Gorbachev's glasnost.
The glasnost.
And, yeah, that's right. So there was, it was perceived that let's change our strategy now. The best help we can give now is actually to scream it out from the tops of mountains and let people know there are bhakti yogis in the USSR, and this is their position. And so that's when I first started to hear like detailed information, but it was really shocking. So I heard about Padmavati, a bhakti yogi who had been taken into a prison while she was pregnant, and she delivered her child in jail. And remember, her crime is that she reads Bhagavad-gita and chants japa. That's her crime. So she delivers her child in jail, and she's allowed to see the child once a day or once every couple of days. And after a few weeks, the child dies. And these stories just really, really shocked and disturbed me. I was 12, and I just couldn't imagine that anyone in our community, living in beautiful Moolamba, by that time I'd returned from India, that anyone in our community could be put into jail for reading the Bhagavad-gita or for singing kirtan. It just really, I couldn't register how that was going on. And so I wondered what I could do about it, and I decided to write Gorbachev a letter. And before sending it, a friend said, "Hey, I know someone at the newspaper. Can I show it to them?" And the next day, I was on the front page of the local Daily Mail holding my letter. And I realized, wow, here's an opportunity, actually. I can bring attention to this as well. And so I went to other newspapers, and I would just show up and say, I got my dad to drive me. Can I speak to the editor-in-chief? I have some really important information about religious persecution in the USSR. And
12 years old.
He's 12 years old. Within minutes, a journalist would come down, and I'll be giving an interview. And so I went to all the newspapers in our local area, Moolamba, then the Gold Coast, and then I went up to Brisbane, and I exhausted all the outlets. So I decided to go to radios, and same approach. I'll just go in and say, I'm Prahlad, I have really important information. can I give an interview?
He was extremely adorable at that point. Too. So,
I
hard to
find you
resist.
still extremely adorable, by the way. I'm just going to put that out there.
Okay.
And so I would give an interview. My dad would be sitting in the car and he would be listening to the radio, and then within minutes I would come on air, and I would be talking about religious persecution in the USSR and talking about these stories of Ananta Shanti. So he was imprisoned. He was put in a psychiatric institution. He was injected with all kinds of psycho drugs that were basically making him crazy. And the devotees, they were these bhakti practitioners. They'd have all their beads and their books and everything confiscated. But they've made a vow that they would chant so many malas of japa every day. So they'll make japa beads out of bread. And
Mara, you have it so easy. You don't even understand, Mara. He's got like a couple of goodie bags laying around
all day in the sun,
laying on this job. God.
Anyway, at some point I realized, look, the interview lasts 5 minutes, but how can I keep the message going out? I've exhausted all the radio stations in our area. I thought, if I turn this letter into a song, they can keep playing it through the day. And so I approached a friend who was a musician. I said, what do you think? Can you help me turn my letter into a song? And so that's what we did. And then the Good Morning Australia, like you have Good Morning America.
Good Morning America.
Yeah. So with ABC, Australian Broadcasting Commission, we had Good Morning Australia. So they became interested in the story, and they interviewed me. They showed us singing our song, me with my friends singing the chorus, please, Gorbachev, please, please let our friends go. And then the chief executive of EMI, he saw it and he called up and said, hey, can I release your song as a single?
Now, hold on a second. We got to understand that EMI, if you don't know, this is like one of the biggest record companies in the world. The Sex Pistols wrote an EMI, so the song EMI, because they were on EMI. But that is like that's a record deal that every musician wants to get. You got one at 12,
right?
And for a very noble cause. It's like the We Are the World of the Hare Krishna movement. Okay, please continue.
Yeah. So they wanted to release that song as a single, but then they said, look, we need another song for the flip side. You got to give us another song. So guess what we did? We wrote a song to Reagan. That was We Want to See the 21st Century. Yeah, I'm embarrassed to sing it. We want to see the start of the 21st century. It was a song, an appeal for peace. So at that time, Gorbachev and Reagan, they were having these peace summits and they were trying to work towards nuclear disarmament. And so that was where the appeal was. But then EMI asked for an album. So that was a 10-song album.
I want to get this album. Can we get, is this on Spotify?
I don't know, actually.
You don't know? What's it called? What's the title?
Through the Eyes of a Child. But that's
the band's name.
No, we were Prahlada and the Krishna Kids. But
Prahlad and the Krishna Kids. I want a T-shirt.
We had T-shirts.
Did you guys tour?
No. I toured to promote the album, but it was visiting. No, we didn't do live concerts.
Okay.
It was touring radio stations to talk about the Soviet Hare Krishna.
Okay, and we're not going to hang on this the whole show at all, but I want to hear it. Now, so what? And Gorbachev got the message. You canceled communism.
So in 1988, I saw a news story that Bob Hawke, the Australian Prime Minister, who passed away a couple of years ago, he was traveling to Moscow to meet Gorbachev. And the newspaper article mentioned that he would be bringing up the issue of Soviet Jews and their appeal to be able to repatriate or to visit Israel and to settle there. They had been blocked by the Soviet authorities. They weren't allowing these Jewish people to settle there in Israel. And they had also experienced persecution. So I I thought, well, if Bob Hawke can raise the issue of the Jewish people to Gorbachev, how about raise the cause of the Hare Krishna prisoners of conscience as well? And so we contacted his office and said, would Bob Hawke deliver a letter? So this is another letter. And what I can say is that, yes, they agreed, send us the letter. Bob Hawke will take it. And within days of his visit, the Jewish people were allowed to resettle in Israel, and Hare Krishna devotees were freed from prisons and insane asylums, psychiatric institutions.
Amazing.
Oh my God.
I spoke to Ananta Shanti by phone. So he'd just been released from his incarceration, and he was overjoyed. He had met with other bhaktas in Moscow. They had an ashram there. Well, they had the seeds of an ashram there. And I spoke with him by phone, and he was just expressing relief and joy and gratitude that he had been freed after so many years of incarceration.
This is so incredibly impressive. I'm so glad we got to tell this story. That's one of those things like, okay, I can die now. I've liberated a bunch of people from prison camps and insane asylums. You did it. You perfected life at age 15.
Yeah,
Unbelievable story.
What I need to say, though, is that there were lots of people working towards this all around the world, people going on hunger strikes and people protesting in front of Soviet embassies in Washington, D.C. and in London. And there was pressure that had built around the world towards this. Bob Hawke's delivering that letter was one piece to a much bigger effort.
Well, but it was the best piece.
It was the best piece, singing a song, getting a record deal. Wow. And I'm sure you've toured Russia many times.
So that's the amazing thing. So just a few years later, at age 15, Indradyumna Maharaj says, travel with me. And part of his itinerary was Russia. At the time, it was still closed. So the first year that I was with him, when he went to Russia, I stayed in London. But the following year, we were in Poland, traveling on the Baltic coast, doing festivals. And we would listen to the BBC. That's how we got our news. It was before the interview. So, on the hour, you tune in, ding, 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 and the BBC comes on.
Before the internet, you
right,
mean?
Yeah, that's right. And so we were listening to the collapse of communism in Russia. It officially came to a close.
1989.
Yeah.
At the end of 89.
End of 89. So, okay. Anyway, we were listening to that. And then a few days later, we were in Moscow. That was already our plan. We had planned. So I arrived in Moscow just like 3 days after the communism had collapsed. And, there was that coup attempt. Gorbachev had been taken out by some coup conspirators. And then Yeltsin had stood on the tank. And then basically they dissolved the Soviet Union.
It's a pretty scary time probably to be in the switching of governments to be in a country.
Yeah, you're
what
right.
was it?
Yeah,
Does it feel like I remember Berlin was like a party, but Moscow, that might've been, what was that like?
It was surreal. It was definitely a power vacuum and everything uncertain. I don't know that it was scary. It was, I think, exciting, but also surreal because you really didn't know what was coming next. But we did kirtan in Red Square with 2,000 people.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
That must have been, for them, that must have been the most just liberating.
We're free. We're free.
Experience.
We're dancing around with a bunch of ladies in saris and men in robes, and we can do whatever we want at this point. Eating pakoras, maybe.
It was incredible. So the line of this kirtan, because during that visit, there were other sannyasis who were also in Moscow. And so people came from all over Russia for over like 7 days or something. And we all went chanting in Red Square. And, often we would chant like in a couple of lines. This line just kept going and going and going because, you turn around at the end of Red Square. I think we went around St. Basil's Cathedral and, the other end of the line was still coming. It was really, really amazing. And nobody could believe that it was happening.
Wow.
It was kind of suspended belief that, is this real? Is this a dream, or is this actually happening now? What's going to happen
tomorrow?
I remember not the first year that the Russian devotees came to India, but the second year they came, I saw them. That was my first time going to India. And I just remember being so impressed with them, you know, with their mood and there's a certain unity that they had. You could see it was really palpable, you know, like they had been through so much together.
Right.
Yeah.
And they took like the fast track to spiritual evolution too.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. True.
Yeah. You want it, you take it, and you run with it, and you hold on to it tight. Whereas, like, I think in a so-called free country or freer country like the United States, it's sort of like, we meander. Maybe I'll chant some japa today. I'm gonna flick on the television. I'm gonna get into some Maya here. But it's like, you want God? Here's God, and they take it real seriously.
Yeah.
And now they're all
amazing.
Over. You can't go anywhere in India without running into Russians.
Right. Yeah, they're very spiritual people, historically, very spiritual people. And so when they got the opportunity to engage with bhakti, with the Srimad Bhagavatam, with the Bhagavad-gita, and these devotional practices, they really took to it. And you're right, it's absolutely amazing. Then you go to Vrindavan, the local people speak Brajabas, they speak English, and they speak Russian.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of them in Vrindavan. So Sri Prahlad, you know, you've led this amazing life, you know, right from a very young age, you know, through all that you did in your youth, to your amazing, you know, we haven't gone into depth in all your travels with Indradyumna Swami and what a special experience that was. And it goes on and on and on. And then you went to school, you went to college, you got a PhD, and now you're a professor, and your field has to do with management and leadership, but particularly in the context of spiritual communities or spiritual organizations. Is that right?
Yeah. So at some point, I thought I really need to hone my communication skills. So that's what I started with as an undergrad. I did a degree in communications and then psychology as well. I just wanted to better articulate the wisdom and the richness of this tradition that we have in Bhakti Yoga. And so I figured a university education would help with that. As I was doing that communications degree, I took some psychology modules as well, and I saw benefit there were tools there as well that I could use in this service. And then I went on to do a master's degree in psychology, and I was offered a PhD as I was doing that. And so I ran with that. I did a PhD on compassion in organizations. And so these days, my most of my research is around compassion in organizations. And but some of that work as well, I mean, what I'm really proud of is last couple of years ago, I published a book with an academic publisher, Leadership Lessons from the Bhagavad-gita. And then, a few months ago,
is that widely available?
Yeah, that'll be available on Amazon.
You want to write that up?
Leadership Lessons from the Bhagavad-gita.
By Sri Prahlada, or did they use your Western name?
Yeah, a civil name.
Which we think is a cool name.
About the coolest name out there.
Ace Simpson. That's his name.
That's right.
That's a rock star name, Ace Simpson.
Sounds like if Bart had a brother that was like a biker or something like that.
Yeah. So there we are. Leadership Lessons from the Bhagavad-gita, Ace Simpson. And just even a few months ago, I published an article in the journal Leadership, where I present a linked leadership model inspired by the Bhagavad-gita.
I think we need to bring you on another time and go into depth in that. But with the time that we have left, maybe we could just let me bring a question to you in relation to this. Yesterday we had our question and answer day, and we had a really great question from a friend of mine who lived in ashrams for 10 or more years, and eventually left. He was mentioning, his spiritual life hasn't been quite as vibrant since then, but he still remembers those times very fondly as some of the best times in his life. But he also just brought up this idea, this tension that exists within spiritual organizations, where there's managerial needs, and then there's also the needs of the individual, and it can be difficult. It's not easy to run a spiritual organization, run an ashram. There's financial pressures and so many other kind of pressures. And at the same time, there's people there that came for a particular education or particular spiritual experience, and it's not easy to balance. Is this the kind of thing you dig into in your work?
Yeah, great question. And it is an area of interest. So I actually have a project right now that I'm working on with a colleague from the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies. Mm-hmm. And we've collected about 40 interviews with people that have lived in ashrams and made that choice to move into an ashram, to live in an ashram for a period of time, and then to move out and to somehow re-engage or integrate with society. Yeah, and the challenges that are involved therein. And we're looking to analyze those interviews for themes, and then hopefully, I will publish on it, but I look to offer that as well to ashram communities as for some insight around what this process involves. So a lot of people struggle coming out of the ashram and finding themselves in society again. But then some do manage to, find their way. It takes a lot of time though. And so that's definitely an area of interest that I think we need to look into, particularly
I can see
as
in
a community.
In my own life, I was in an ashram for about 7.5 years, a monk for 6.5. You miss out on a massive chunk of popular culture, and you become like, I didn't listen to music. I didn't know what people were. I didn't even know how to dress anymore. I went into the ashram. Everyone had peg-leg jeans. I came out of the ashram. Everyone had stovepipe jeans. I was like, I'm supposed to wear these now? That's not me. And so I was like, you're sort of like lost in the world of a persona that in your heart of hearts, it's not even you anyway. Why am I trying to? You've been trained in renunciation. This stuff's all temporary. Anyway, how am I supposed to put on a persona, a disguise almost, or a guise? It sort of killed a part of my ego that maybe could never be reborn again.
Yeah. I think those experience. You've well articulated the challenges that people experience there. One thing that if you look to the tradition, like look to the Bhagavatam, the ashram experience is generally it's time dated. It's a
right. Yeah.
You go in with a sense that this is a period of education. Once you learn your discipline and you receive that wisdom and training, then you're going to go back out into the world. So you're kind of trained actually to live in the world rather than to live in the ashram. Right. And the way a lot of ashrams are done is you're trained to live in the ashram. And that's the decision you're made.
And you have no idea when you're getting out.
It's exactly what we were talking about yesterday. And Raghunath said it's kind of like, it was just like, there was just kind of an arrow, and it was just like, keep going that direction.
Keep going until you crumble.
Yeah. But traditionally, actually, it wasn't done like that. And so it's kind of a misapplication. And then if we look historically, we'll see that where that approach is taken, 99.9% of people don't actually end up living in the ashram for all of their lives. And so there's a reason why that's not taught as the way to go for the tradition. There will be a small minority that do dedicate themselves that way, like Indradyumna Swami, as someone who's taken that vow as a monk. And, that's their lifelong commitment. But
we're going to do, I'm sorry. I'm an interrupter. Ask Kaustubha. He'll tell you. He'll tell you off camera.
Yeah. So for most people, I think that period is really, really helpful. Go in and get some ashram experience. If it's 3 months or a month or a week or 2 weeks or a retreat, it's profoundly beneficial. If it's a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, great. You can get so much from it. You learn so much, you develop so much as a person, and you can become a leader in the sense of having that self-discipline and self-regulation that makes you incredibly, powerful, and can make you incredibly powerful and resourceful in the world as well. So there's definite benefit to the ashram life. I think we should teach it though as something that people can go into for training and then come out of it again to engage and be part of society.
Yeah, you need to make a plan. You need to make a plan.
A curriculum.
And we're trying to, we're trying to do, Sri Prahlad. We're trying to create an ashram month where at our farm that people can come, stay for 2 weeks or a month and just dive in. And you do the seva, you get the education, you do the music, and it gives people an ashram experience that is not saying open-ended. We don't know where it's going to end, and it has specific goals to meet. Which is, if I could do a do-over, I'd be like, okay, I got to master cooking. I got to master the mridanga. I got to, you know what I mean? But it was just sort of like floating around and walking around India. Yeah. Okay, there's a festival today.
That's right.
Maybe we can consult with you as we go into doing this, Sri Prahlada.
Yeah, since you're a PhD in this regard.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to share, contribute any way that I can. And I think it's wonderful that you're doing this project. It's so important that we don't throw out the water, the baby with the bathwater as well, because let's get it right rather than throw it out altogether.
With you.
The ashram experience is so wonderful.
We say don't throw out the Brahmin with the bathwater around here.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. and as far as leadership is concerned, we have the idea in the Bhagavatam or in the Bhagavad-gita of the Raja Rishi. So the king who is a saint as well. And they would go and live in ashrams. They would go and get the Gurukula training for a period of time, and then they come back out. And now they can be not just Rajas, not just kings, but Raja Rishis, saintly kings, because they have that grounding and that experience. And so, if we had more Raja Rishis in our society, in the sense of people who have had some ashram training and experience, but then they're in the world and, they're leading companies and they're CEOs or they're involved in politics, we would have a much better society. Would have better companies that are actually not just looking at profit, but also other stakeholder benefits and service. They have a service orientation.
That's exactly what we're talking about. Actually, I think it might even been in the podcast a month or so ago, and we called it "Don't Throw the Brahmin Out with the Bathwater." But yeah, how Prabhupada's vision of Varnashram could play out is I see is exactly as you're saying. Let's train people up to go out into the world, start their own businesses, but with a different ethic, and with an ethic that's standing on the foundation of spiritual knowledge, right? Divya Gyana, like understanding I'm a soul, you're a soul. We're all playing different roles, but it's all moving in one direction towards, the development of divine love.
Yeah. So I refer to this in my book as linked leadership. Linked as in yoga. So yoga is to link up, to connect. And so a leader as one who is linked, is connected. In the Gita, Krishna talks about the parampara and the kings receiving wisdom, ancient wisdom in a chain of disciplic succession. And that's their preparation. With that linkage that they have with the ancient wisdom, then they can be in the world as linked leaders or yoga leaders or Raja Rishis. But then the other link or linkage is what you were saying. They can see themselves as a servant to all beings and to the earth, to all the communities that they're interacting with. So not going out with a mood of exploitation and domination and control, but to be there as a leader in a mood of service to society and the community.
Let's make it happen. We'll do it together.
Make it happen. Yeah. When can we hang out with you? You're staying in the UK now?
I'm in the UK. I've been here for 3 years, although part of that time I also I'm in Cyprus as well. So I commute between the UK and Cyprus. My wife is there. She's Cyprus is amazing in the Mediterranean, and we have a wonderful Bhakti community there. And my wife is there completing her medical degree. So she's been there for 3 years and let's say 9 months. So she has just a few more months to go to complete her degree. And then we'll see what happens after that.
See. And we have our own personal desires of where that might all end up. But we won't get into that now.
Kaustubha and I have been talking.
We've been talking. Yeah. But Prabhu, before we end, we just have a couple minutes left. But one thing I wanted to bring to the attention of all of our listeners who are studying, I don't know if studying is the right word, but are hearing Bhagavatam on Wisdom of the Sages every day.
Some study.
Yeah,
some are taking crazy notes.
Yeah, I don't see ourselves as professors of it, but we get some people. Let's call it.
You can call me professor if you like.
I'll call you professor for now. We'll call you the
Okay,
professor.
I won't get offended.
All right. But they're hearing Bhagavatam every day, and you're presenting Bhagavatam live on Facebook, especially, right? Is that correct?
Yeah,
Twice a
that's
week?
right. So twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays at 7 a.m. London time.
That's a little early for Americans, but it stays up there.
Too
Right?
early. Yeah, that is early that is right. So it's Sri Prahladas on
Sri
Facebook.
Prahlada. Okay.
Yeah.
And they can
we
find your
overview
talks.
the Bhagavatam. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're systematically going through the Bhagavatam. We actually started in the lockdown when COVID started. I thought, how do I support people now? How do I make a contribution? I can't go out into yoga studios and sing kirtan for them or give talks on bhakti. So then I just started doing these online Bhagavatam talks.
Amazing.
Initially it was every morning, and then brought it down to 2 mornings a week. And we just finished the 4th canto of the Bhagavatam. We're starting the 5th now. So yeah, they're all recorded. They're up there on Facebook, Sri Prahladas.
DAS.
Right. You're going to get a bunch of followers now.
We don't have nearly the same listenership as you.
But quality. It's got the quality over there.
But it is a beautiful community. And it's so
I highly recommend it.
nourishing.
Sri Prahlada's, as you can see, he's a very special person, and he's very insightful. Really knows, he was learning when he was, in those schools studying Bhagavatam.
It's quite impressive. Prabhu, thank you for joining us. Sri Prahlad. If you want to follow him on Instagram, it's Sri Prahlad _official.
How do you spell Prahlad?
And
P-R-A.
you could, what's that?
H-L-A-D.
PRAHLADA _official. And also, if you want to just check him out on YouTube, Sri Prahlad Kirtan, you're going to find some incredible stuff, including a reggae band of yours that Shelter played with when we played that massive festival in Poland. Thanks for joining us.
About that.
We are inspired. Yeah, we didn't get there yet. We are inspired by your story, and you're raising the bar high for all of us. I'm going to stop complaining about everything from now on, and I'm going to make sure Mara stops complaining about stuff.
Thank you. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure, a privilege. I'm so grateful for the opportunity.
We love you,
and,
Guru.
just great catching up. Thank you.
And this is one of the more exciting parts of the show. This is the dance cam feature now. We do a little kirtan.
We all
You
start
can
to
see
dance
some good
around.
dancers.
Yeah.
If you're new to this on Facebook, you too can dance at home. We do this every day. Hannah Brinkhouse is dancing. There she is.
Mara, you on it?
She's on. Oh, Mara runs the dance cam. If you want to join us here live at Zoom, again, it's wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Please join us. Want to thank Jerome and Matt Godden, Kelly Skinnergy, and Amalini, and Bunky, and Damodar Priya for joining us live. Sometimes live. That means you just show up here. I want to thank all the others. We got 27,000 downloads yesterday listening to the Srimad Bhagavatam. It is a Krishna miracle happening right around us. It's unbelievable. And so we call on the show, we call those people that we don't see by their face, that aren't on Zoom, we call them others. Welcome, others. We're glad to have you here. And the more, I can honestly say, the more you hear the Bhagavatam, it starts to change your vision of reality. And it's really about how we look at the world that starts to assist us to upgrade our life. If we want to understand yoga, we have to understand the mind and how to pacify the mind and how to see ourselves underneath the mind. And this is what the Bhagavatam does. It starts to melt away our bad qualities. Hey, we're works in progress, but we're working on it. And we're trying to raise the bar and upgrade the quality of our life. Thanks to all the dedicated listeners. Haribo!